This exercise comes in two parts. Part A is a vertical parabola that opens up to just serve as a review so that we review all the bits and pieces of graphing parabolas or graphing what we call quadratic functions, right? We have the vertex, we have the x-intercepts, the y-intercept, and then for part B, we're going to graph one that opens sideways. So it's a very different kind of function. It's similar, that is parabola, but instead of opening up and down, it'll open left or right. So let's first start with A. This will serve as more of a review. We have y equals x squared plus 4x minus 5. So perhaps you remember how to find the vertex, maybe not. The vertex formula is this, and this is one that really pays off to memorize. X equals negative b over 2a. Okay, and that's just half of the vertex. So it's a comma, and then the y is f of x, f of whatever that is. So I'll say f of negative b over 2a, meaning you plug in that x value into you plug it back into the original function, and you get your y value back. So let's try it here. So we have x equals negative b over 2a. Well, this is our b term, this is our c, our a is 1 in this case. So this is negative 4 over 2 times 1, negative 2. All right, so then to get our y value, we plug in negative 2. So I'm plugging it in here and here. All right, so that gives us quantity, negative 2 squared, so I'm careful to put parentheses around those, plus 4 times negative 2 minus 5. Okay, well, what is this? So this gives 4 minus 8 minus 5. So I'm thinking negative 9. All right, so these combine to give us our vertex, negative 2, negative 9. All right, so negative 2, negative 9, so it's somewhere way down here, 6, 7, 8, 9, a little bit off of our axes, but that's okay. So there's our vertex, negative 2, negative 9. Now look at our leading coefficient here. Since this is positive in the very front of this, that means it opens up. All right. Our y-intercept is always this number here, so that's our y-intercept. Also could be found by plugging in 0 for x. So we have a y-intercept of negative 5. Let's be very official about it. It'd be 0, comma, negative 5. Okay, so there's our y-intercept. This is already coming together here. And let's get our x-intercepts. To get our x-intercepts, remember you put in 0 for y, so that gives us 0 equals x squared plus 4x minus 5. All right, so then that's something we can factor and solve. X and x, how about plus 5 minus 1? That gives us x equals negative 5 and x equals positive 1. Okay, so there we have our two x-intercepts. Here at negative 5, positive 1. We have our y-intercept, and that should be enough for us to graph this thing. Actually, the vertex should be at negative 2. That's at negative 1. So here we go, negative 2. That looks a little better. Then we just connect the dots for our parabola. Something like that. Hopefully yours looks better than mine does, but you get the idea. Something up like that. Okay, that's a little pointier than I'd like. Parabolas are not pointy, they're very rounded. There's no points in them. Okay, but you get the idea. It opens up, general parabola, we have our x-intercepts and our y. Now, this factored, right? Notice how it was a nice factor. If it doesn't factor, you have two options depending upon what the question is asking. You may be able to use the quadratic formula and get some rational roots. So maybe it's like 1 plus or minus square root of 2 or something like that. In which case you could use a calculator to estimate those values. But if it's not explicitly asking for x-intercepts, if it's just asking for the graph, I would just find the y-intercept and then note that you get another point over here, right? Because we have our axis of symmetry, right? So anytime you get one point, you get another one for free. So this should really be coming up like that through that point. And then you have your 2 points and your vertex, and you don't necessarily need the x-intercepts to still be able to graph it. It's not the best graph, but it just depends. So look at whatever the original question that you're working on is asking. If it wants the explicit x-intercepts, then you got to do whatever it takes to find them. But if it's just asking for the graph and your equation doesn't factor, sometimes you can just go straight for the y-intercept and call it good. Okay, that's opening up and down. Let's try one that opens sideways. Okay, here we have x equals negative y squared plus 6y minus 8. Okay, so when it's x equals something, that means it's going to be sideways. It's either going to open to the right or to the left. And since this is negative, that means it opens to the left. Opens left. So a lot of what we'll do is going to be analogous to what we did with the up and down case, with the function case. This technically is not a function because it doesn't pass the vertical line test. The other one was a function. Let's do the vertex next. For the vertex, we now have, instead of x equals negative b over 2a, it's y equals negative b over 2a. So it's very similar. Everything's just flipped. And then the x value is found by plugging in whatever you get for y back into this function here. So f of negative b over 2a. Okay, and then the vertex, when we do it, will still be x comma y. So when we do the ordered pair, for a point, it's still x value coming first and then y value. Okay, so let's do it here. We have y equals negative b. Well, here's our b term is 6. A is negative 1. So there's a 1 right here, so that's our a. All right, so we have negative b, negative 6 over 2 times negative 1. Well, that's negative 6 over negative 2, positive 3. And now I want to get the x value, so I'm going to plug into both of these y's here. All right, plugging that in gives us x equals negative 3 squared plus 6 times 3 minus 8. So that's negative 9 plus 18 minus 8. Okay, so what is that? 9 minus 8 is 1. Okay, so now we write this as an ordered pair. X comes first, so we have 1 comma 3. There's our vertex, 1 comma 3. We can go ahead and add that into our graph. There we go, 1 point down. Let's talk about the x-intercept. This c value over here always gives us our x-intercept, whatever it is. So in this case, it's negative 8. You can also think of that as plugging in 0 for y. Whatever intercept you want, you just plug in 0 for the opposite value, and it'll give you the intercept. So here if we put in 0 for y, these first two terms would drop out, and we'd be left with just negative 8 anyway. Okay, so that goes off our graph a little bit. No big deal, though. Maybe here, negative 7, negative 8. Okay, so here's our x-intercept. And we just need our y-intercepts. And I'll use the same rule of thumb. If this factors, I'll go ahead and do the y-intercepts. And if it doesn't, I already have the x-intercept. I can use symmetry to get another point up here somewhere. And that's enough points to graph it. But again, look at what each individual problem asks you to find. Okay, so let's see here. For the y-intercepts, okay, remember that means we're setting x equal to 0. You always set the opposite variable equal to 0. That gives us 0 equals negative y squared plus 6y minus 8. I don't like factoring when the leading coefficient is negative, but we have this equal to 0 here. So I'm going to divide everything by negative 1. Right, both sides by negative 1, and this only works at this step. I couldn't have done this up above. It only works because now I have this 0 here on one side. So now I can happily divide everything by negative 1. We still get 0 on the left, and we now have y squared minus 6y plus 8. That just changes the sign of everything on the right side. And now we can factor. This one does factor. Let's see here. How about y and y? Minus 4 minus 2 will do the trick, which gives us y equals 4 and y equals 2 for our y-intercepts. y equals 4, and y equals 2. And there we have it. You can see the parabola starting to come in to view here. It opens to the left. So here we go. Let's connect these dots as best we can here. It comes in like this, circles around, and then heads back out. I don't know, something like that. Get the idea here. Opens to the left. It's very similar to the up and down case, just everything is flipped.